Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop Fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
After the wedding is over, it's sons and their father in the woods, or else they'll turn out gay.
Min hustru.
Jeg vil meget gerne tale med dig, men ikke lige nu.
That's a weird line for you to latch on to.
Because it's like the weirdest line in the movie. It is a very strange line in the movie. All right.
Well, it's, yeah.
So we're doing After the Wedding, Andy. After the Wedding. It's the second and final film in our very brief Mads and Susanne series.
It is very brief, but it did give us a chance to add Susanne Bier's films to our list. And it also got us talking about Mads Mikkelsen. And, I mean, really, we need to talk about Mads and Susanne as often as possible. This was a great context to talk about both of them I'm glad that we're adding this one to the list. So
there are a number of After the Weddings. There's one from, I think, 1962. I haven't seen it. One from 2018, I believe.
2019. It's the 2019 remake of this.
Of this, which I haven't seen either. I think there was good intention that we might watch it in preparation for this show. Didn't. And then there is the this film from 2006.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd hoped to get the 2016 one watched, but especially because I have a great curiosity about how they handle the situation. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we got to talk about
this big situation that is revealed early in the film. I mean, it's revealed fairly early in the film. She's not really, she's her parentage. The girl getting married, her parentage is in question.
Yes. So, do you want to call my shot? What do you think I thought of it?
I would say that you really enjoyed this film.
That's it? No nuance to that? You don't want to give a little color commentary, texture?
I think this film cemented your love for Mads Mikkelsen. And you have decided that if there ever was a man for you, it would be him.
COVID's really taken a toll on the old Andy Nelson writer's room, isn't it? Oh dear.
I know. That's not much. Right. Not much there.
All right.
I think
I think you liked it well enough, and I know that you did because you already posted a review.
I did. We'll talk about it.
A lot of teasing going on. Let's get to it.
This film, when it was released here in the States, was rated R for some language and a scene of sexualité. You want to watch this movie and help us out? Well, you can. If you see the Apple or an Amazon link to the movie in the show notes right here on your podcast, just click on it. It will take you right to their site, and you can rent or buy the movie. This holds true for any of the movies that we talk about. When you do this, we get a little piece in return, and you, of course, get to watch the movie. And Amazon and Apple, they make off with all sorts of money. So it's great. Everybody wins.
They make off with it?
They get.
Yeah,
I'd venture to say they're making probably one of the heftier chunks of the rental. I'm sure Susanne or Mads get a tiny trickle.
Hey, speaking of a tiny trickle, if you head to our merch store at truestory.fm/TNR merch, you can buy shirts and bags and masks and not hats, notebooks. You can get notebooks and pillows with all the stuff that we've come up with over the last year on the show. You could do that, and then we get a tiny trickle. Whenever you buy, we get a tiny trickle, a sniff, as they say, at truestory.fm/TNR merch. No idea what this is going to be. Maybe a pregnancy test?
You said, speaking of a tiny trickle, and I immediately went to the Green Mile and Tom Hanks, and yes. I'm just like,
That's of course where you go.
Is there going to be a plug for a shirt about somebody who's having bladder issues?
A tiny trickle.
Where are we going with this particular marketing?
Yeah, that's good.
Yes. Hey, we would love to feature audio reviews from you, our dear listeners. If you send us an audio file, just send it over to reviews@truestory.fm. Once you watch the movie, we just might end up showcasing your voice on the show. You got to get them in quick. We do record early, so the sooner you get your clip into us, the more likely it will end up in the podcast. Again, just send it into reviews@truestory.fm.
But wait, how would I ever know what movies you're going to be talking about in the coming weeks, months, and seasons? Well, that's easy. Just head over to letterboxd.com/thenextreel. Letterboxd is the greatest social network for movie lovers. And that URL there, letterboxd.com/thenextreel, is our HQ page on Letterboxd, where you can find all of our watch lists and reviews and show links. Everything you could ever want to see about the show is available from Letterboxd. And When you get there and fall in love with it, like we know you will do, you can sign up to a pro or patron membership yourself and remove those ads and know that you're supporting a fantastic team of developers making this great social network for movie lovers. Just use the code NEXTREEL at checkout and you will get 20% off. And hallelujah, this works for renewals as well.
Just like Letterboxd and their memberships, we have our own membership as well. You can head over to our site and you can sign up for it. Go to truestory.fm/TNR membership, and you can sign up in a month-to-month membership or at an annual rate. And you get all sorts of wonderful, wonderful things. You get bonus episodes. We have all sorts of bonus episodes. It's crazy how many bonus episodes we have. Just a few weeks back, we released our member bonus episode to everybody, so everyone could kind of get a taste of it. But it was our Blues Brothers episode that we did as a return to our Great Car Chases series. That was for our May members, and who knows what we're going to do for June, but that will be one of our member bonus episodes. We also do a Flick Chart re-ranking episode where we play around with our rankings of all the movies that we've talked about on the show over in our Flick Chart. And we do, at the end of each series, we do a retake episode where we kind of review in a little more detail what we thought of the films of that particular series. And members also get to vote on what we're going to be talking about, and they get episodes a week early. So all sorts of wonderful things that members can get. Again, you go to truestory.fm/TNR membership to learn about the tiers. The most it'll cost you is $5 a month or $55 a year.
All right, Andy, here we are after the wedding. Wow. Okay. So, rich people. You want to talk about rich people first? Because my goodness, he's so, he's rich, but he's approachable. Jorgen is it's such an interesting character because he's such like the kind of the typical rich guy who, I mean, as we find out over the course of the film, there's a lot going on in his life, and he has decided to play God, and because he's rich, he's able to, and he's created this plan where he basically is moving all these pieces into a very particular place that he wants them in, because he wants to make sure that everything is taken care of. And it's a really, it's kind of like just one of those atrocious characters that does these things that, and it's interesting the way the film sets it up, because you're not sure is he really, did he set this up? Is this incredible coincidence or what? In fact, maybe we should start talk.
there.
Yeah, we need to talk about what you're insinuating he set up, because I think that is worth discussing. So the movie starts, Mads is in India. Yeah,
with Jacob, as he's kind of running an orphanage that's struggling for money, and he gets a call. You see him interacting with his kids, great rapport with the kids, but he needs to go back to Copenhagen to have this meeting with this company that wants to provide funding, but he has to do it in person, so he has to fly back. That's kind of our setup.
That's the setup. And he doesn't, from a character perspective, there is nothing that indicates he wants to go on this trip. He wants to stay in. He says, why should I need to go on this trip? I don't want to go. He doesn't want to go. He's talking to the kids. He's like, I don't want to go. I'll be back really soon. I'll definitely be back for your birthday, Pramod. I don't even want to go. I get the sense early on that it feels like he's running from something. Like there is something that he's happier. He's a fish out of water in India, and he's happier there. So there must be something that he's running from that he doesn't want to deal with. That was my early take on the character.
And I think that's a fair assessment. Or just like, it seems like maybe not running, but more comfortable now here than there. Like there's this sense
that's
that
right.
Yeah.
So he ends up he puts on a suit, which he has made or at least tailored in India. He gets on a plane and he goes back to goes home, Copenhagen, and he is set up to meet with Jørgen. This is Jørgen Hansen, who is the CEO of this major Danish construction, I'm going to guess some sort of construction corporation.
Yeah, something like that. It seemed like.
He uses the word cranes all the time.
He does, but I was like, is it hotels? Because he says, I can't wait till you can go stay in our place in Singapore or whatever.
Yes.
I'm like, maybe it is a hotel. I wasn't sure.
Okay, so it might be a hotel. It doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter.
But
it doesn't matter.
He's made a lot of money and he has a lot of people who are out there helping him. So they have this meeting. And at that point, Jørgen is also dealing with this other sort of personal story, which is his daughter is marrying one of his employees.
Christian, right.
Christian. And they're also preparing for the wedding. And Jacob happens to be in Copenhagen the very weekend of the wedding. And so Jørgen says, hey, why don't you come to the wedding? It'll be great. I don't know most of the people are going to be there either. Don't even worry about it. Come, have a good time, have some drinks, eat some good food, and you'll stay as you'll be there as our guest.
Right. And he says, I really want to give you this money, but I'm going to think about it. I'll give you my final decision on Monday. That's kind of the setup. So he's like, well, all right, I guess I'll go to this wedding.
Yes. And so he goes to the wedding. He ends up going to the wedding. And when he gets to the wedding,
brilliantly late, by the way. I love that he gets there late because their car is stuck behind a tractor that's taking up the road.
That's right. Fun. And the fact that the driver, it is so not his fault, right? The driver was the driver assigned by Jørgen. It was like the personal Jørgen, driver, right?
Right, exactly.
So there was this wedding sets up every bit of anxiety that for me, like it piques my anxiety. Like first of all, just going to weddings is a lot. It's a big ask. I'm not crazy about weddings. But second, going to a wedding at which I don't know anybody is maybe a bridge too far. But to go to a wedding where the wife of the millionaire industrialist is someone that you know or have history with, that is, that's not great. That is the top layer of the anxiety layer cake. I can't stand it. So the whole setup is deeply uncomfortable. And the wedding happens, the reception, and now the speeches happen. And we're about a half hour into the movie, right?
Yeah, this is all very much first act stuff. I mean, it's after the wedding is the title. So, and we should say, like, unlike last week's, it's the title in English and in Danish. Either way, it's all after the wedding.
That's all you need to know is most of the important stuff happens after the wedding.
Right.
And so the new husband stands up and he gives a little speech and it's fine.
It is an ass kissing speech to his father-in-law. Holy cow.
It really is. And he says, and if somebody actually yells from the audience, who are you marrying, Jørgen or Annie? Or like, who are you marrying? It is an ass kissing speech. But then she stands up, the daughter. She stands up and says, I know you're not accustomed to hearing daughters from the bride or speeches from the bride, but I just want to say a few things. When you told me when I was 18 a few years ago that you were not my biological father, and Andy, I'm not kidding, audible gasp from me sitting alone in my living room. That surprised me so much. I just was like, oh my God, the drama. All of a sudden, everything falls into place. Not only does Mads, Jacob, have a history with the mother of the bride, but now we find out he is also the father of the bride.
Yeah.
And that the industrialist is now in between this biological family unit. That was shocking and brilliant.
And also, I was like, Who would give a speech like this? This is like the in and out like Oscar speech. Andy's gay. Like, you don't just come up and stand there. Oh, and by the way, my mom had an affair when she was younger, or slept with some guy, and
You
was like, oh my.
Okay. You were way overthinking that. I think I was totally in it. I was totally in it.
I am too. I laugh about it because it comes across as like, God, what about these people who had no idea? Like, it just ends up seeming like something that you like letting the cat out of the bag that, by the way.
Well, so the wedding goes on. There are many shocked faces. The wedding goes on. The reception goes on, and there's a lot of brooding in the dark, brooding in the corner. Mads is very clearly needs to talk to the mother, Helen, and so he finally corners her, and they have a confrontation. Did you know, like, this was mine, and is that my daughter, et cetera, et cetera. And she says, I'll call you.
Well, at first, and she very vehemently says no. Like, she's
right.
Yeah. Like, but it's interesting because this situation has hit everybody in this way where it's like, how do you react? Like, what's the right way to handle it in this particular? I mean, it's her wedding. You don't want to create this scene.
Right.
It makes for one of the most intense bits there. It's so intense when all of a sudden all of this stuff is just hits so quickly.
Yes. Now, from there, Mads Jacob is waiting in his hotel room, his amazing hotel room, for the call that Helen promises she will make to him to further discuss this, and he ends up not receiving that call. So he goes and goes back over to their estate and knocks on the door and says, I need to talk to her. Everybody's there opening gifts. The new couple, the mother and the father, they're all hanging out opening, and the grandmother who can't get on the internet to play because she's addicted to online poker. Which was
so funny.
Great. So they have the conversation, but what I love about it is they have the conversation, the three of them, the Jorgen, Helen, and Jakob. They're all having the conversation together. Right, and I think that's an important bit that we'll come back to. And it's very frustrating. And Mads Jacob says, hey, you got to tell her or I'm going to tell her. And he walks out, and they end up having the conversation with the daughter. So now everything's out of the bag. All the cats are out of the bag. And here we are, right? I mean, that pretty much catches us up to the story.
But I think it's important to say at this point also that Jorgen continues to say, I had no idea. He was just this business guy I'm doing business with. I knew his name was Jakob, but I didn't think he was that Jakob.
Right.
And they're like, the coincidence is too strange. How could you not have known? Like, they're convinced that he had planned this. He keeps saying, no, this was just random.
And this is why. So before you answer that question, the second half of the movie, it starts to come out that, and I think really the third act is about it reveals that Jorgen is dying, and rather urgently.
Very much so.
Right. And he has been, in the very first sequence when he shows up at his estate house, he's taking some sort of pills, but he locks them in a safe behind a curtain. We don't really know the significance of that until later when she gets into that safe and finds it's like morphine and all these kinds of painkillers for his condition. He is dying. And now we get to see that he's sort of putting pieces in place. He wants Jakob back in their lives. He wants somebody to work with Anna, and as part of the contractual agreement to get an extraordinary amount of money, way more than they'd asked for this orphanage in India. One of the contingencies is that Jakob has to stay with them. He can't move back to India. It sets up a lot of complicating factors, but it's Jorgen moving pieces around the board to do his sort of post-life planning.
He wants a man back in his wife's life, basically, like potentially replacing him. He wants the father figure to be in his daughter, and also for their twins, he says. So it's interesting how he's like created this way to manipulate Jakob to come back to fill in for him as part of the family, not and this business as well. And yeah, that's what I think is a very interesting way that he sets it all up.
So this goes back to the question we've been not answering the whole time is, did Jørgen set this up from the beginning, or was it machinations of convenience after he discovered that he had brought that particular Jakob to the wedding?
I 100% think that he had found Jakob and he had been following him, and he knew what he was doing. He knew how he lived his life, and he knew he was a good person. I mean, he's failed at all of the businesses, as he says, that he has tried setting up in India. And currently he's doing this orphanage, but he says, your orphanage is going to be failing. It's already on its way out. You need this. And so I think that he knows that he's a good person and has cleaned up his act. I mean, we've learned from the course of the film, when he and Helen had their relationship 20 years ago, that he was a drunk, that he had slept with her best friend, and he was unable to kind of get his life on track, which largely makes sense for the fact that he never came home, and he's living this kind of life of this person who's trying to do good in the world because he can't figure himself out. Like, that's kind of the sense we end up getting of him as a character. Mm-hmm. I think that's really interesting. But I do believe that Jørgen saw that and realized there's a potential, there's a good person here who could actually make all of this work. And if I give him the money to do this, and I kind of force my hand for him to stay here, he could end up taking care of them. And that's, so I 100% think that he figured all of that out, didn't tell anyone, and put this whole plan together.
It took me a while to come to that. I really thought that it was more circumstance, not manipulation, that Jakob showed up, and because they have that conversation early in the morning light, right? The day after the wedding. This is Helen and Jørgen, and they have this conversation on the stairs of their estate because he hasn't come to bed, and she catches him and she says, did you know? He says, well, I didn't know it was that, Jakob. Right. And over the course of the film, they keep coming back to this, Jørgen looked for you and couldn't find you. He looked several times in India and couldn't find you. And so I think it does a good job of making the case that, in fact, it was just crazy circumstance that all these people, all these pieces would come together at the same time in the same place, kind of accidentally. Right. It's only in hindsight that I look at all of the pieces, like all the pieces together on the board that make it feel much more like he was. Like I think it's actually Jakob's line. It's who says, you're made of money. Like, you seriously couldn't hire an army to come find me. Like, it would not have taken that much. I wasn't that much in hiding, and right. And that's really the case. The problem, I think, is that Jørgen plays it so straight, like there's no sinister sort of bent to his portrayal of this character at all. He feels completely authentic to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It ended up being a surprise to me when it all came together at the end. But that actually does lead us to the third act, which is his undoing, right? As he dies. And how did that hit you?
Again, this is this person who is playing God and has made these decisions about how things should be because this is how I envision it. He's put this whole plan together. He pretty much has to force his hand with Jakob because he has that confrontation toward the end. Now, this is when Jakob finds out what's going on, but he's offered him this $12 million trust, and he's going to run it with Anna, but he has to stay here. And that's that sticking point. And Jakob is like, no, you can't, you you think you can get whatever you want just because you're throwing money around, but screw you. And he walks out. And that's, I think, probably the first time that Jorgen is confronted with the fact that he can't necessarily just buy things. And I found that to be really powerful, because that's when he chases Jakob down in the street and reveals to him that he's dying and that he needs him to do this. And this is this whole thing that he's put together. And that's like the first honest moment where he's like having this, he's practically begging him to do it. And it's interesting because Jakob still walks away. I mean, he, because of what happens afterward, he ends up changing his mind. But that was such an interesting moment that you have there where he's, he realizes that you can't just play God and manipulate all these things to get what you want. It's not, people have to be able to make their own decisions. And I found that to be really powerful. And it also helps. I mean, I love Rolf Lassgård, who plays Jorgen. I mean, he was in A Man Called Ove, which I just absolutely loved. And so I think that he's just a very compelling actor and does a great job as this rich guy who is basically just, the puppet master in this particular scene or in this situation.
Yeah.
And so it's such an interesting setup that you have there that, of course, Helen uncovers all this stuff, calls his doctor and finds out what's going on. And the daughter finds out, and everyone finds out that he's dying. It's an incredibly powerful scene when Anna comes to talk to him at his office and tells him, "You cannot do this. You can't tell me when I get to grieve. You have to talk to us." And his whole thing is he just didn't want anybody to look at him as if he were dead before he was actually dead.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But at the same time, they need to know and they need to be able to. And she says, I would be spending more time with you rather than doing these other things had I known.
Yeah.
I would be able to say
powerful.
the things to you
Yeah.
if, that I wouldn't say otherwise, and that's the stuff that he just doesn't see. And it takes that scene with Anna breaking down in his office for him to finally recognize that. And that's the power of that. And that's where I think he has come full circle and he has learned from both Jakob and from her the error in his ways. And you can't just go around playing God. Yes, in the particular case, this stuff that he did, it does end up all working out. But it made it so much more complicated,
Yeah, I do. And I particularly love when Anna comes to his hotel room, to Jakob's hotel room, and says, "Can I stay here?" After she walks in and discovers that Christian was having an affair already.
Oh my God.
I mean, days.
I wrote down in my notes, I'm like, God, do you not even wait a day?
Well, and as an aside, who was he having an affair with?
I could never quite tell from the angle.
My initial thought was that it was the woman that was making a pass at Mads Mikkelsen at the wedding that he had to freak out at because she wouldn't leave him alone.
Yeah, maybe.
But I don't know if that was me just canoning it. But I really love that scene because for the first time in the movie, she says, "Can I stay here?" And we realize, okay, that's a father and a daughter. Right. For the first time, it's not I'm meeting you for the first time complication. It's like there is a need from her as a daughter, and she goes to her dad for comfort and safety. And that was, I thought, a lovely, lovely twist on their relationship to grow their relationship almost effortlessly. For me, it was a switch. Loved it.
Yeah. The scenes with them were always very powerful. Like the first time she comes to talk to him and they are, they're struggling, trying to figure out what to talk about, but just the way that he's fumbling, trying to help her open up that water bottle and stuff. Uh-huh. We already know he cares greatly about others. And it just felt like he had it in him to try to care for her and to take care of her.
Right.
And so I loved those bits. And when she comes to him, I felt like she had that connection already. Like, he will help take care of me. And it was really touching to see her come to his place, feeling lost and everything, and needing that comfort,
and being able to find it. Right.
Yeah,
that was
right.
It just was really special. So then we get to I think the biggest single moment in the third act is Helene sits next to Jorgen on the bed, and he starts crying about the end of his life, about the grief that he is going through, knowing that he's dying, that there's nothing he can do. And it's all about him saying to her, like, why do you need me to answer this question about which class the twins are going to be in? Well, you don't need me to do that anymore. I'm not here for that. You have to make that decision on your own. And then he just amps it up. And it was, it was a rough watch. Not going to lie to you. That was a rough watch.
Yeah. I mean, he's a man who's been able to get everything. He started poor and he's made a life for himself, and he can get anything he wants. Doesn't mean he can, stop from dying. And it's very difficult watching him fighting that and just howling, I don't want to die. I mean, it's knowing that it's impending. And I mean, we're never really sure exactly how short of a time he has, because, I mean, it seems like he's been trucking along. Obviously, once she's called the doctor, it seems like it's pretty short. It seems like there's not a lot of time left. And yeah, the very next scene, I mean, it's his funeral. So it wasn't long, and it was very difficult kind of seeing a person go through that, because that is probably how almost everybody feels when you hit that point, And I mean, he had his 48th birthday. That's
48, yeah.
Like he had just turned 48, which as a 48-year-old, I got to say,
it's rough.
It really puts a lot of things in perspective.
Yeah, it's rough. I think, and I should say personally that I'm sure that colors some of my impression of the film, because I feel like I just had those conversations with my dad. It's still really fresh. Like we went through the transition together of like the last things, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to be where I am, and that grief, and it turned to, this is right. I understand now that there's no coming back from that. So we got that roller coaster, and we actually got it over about 8 days, instead of, I think, the rather fuzzy use of time in the movie. And so I felt like that sequence was incredibly powerful and authentic, and I didn't find myself shaken by it at all. I just was, man, I was in it and grieving right along with him. Yeah. Very, very powerful, the way all of this comes across. And that's what's so interesting, is because, like, and in a film where we're exploring altruism, here we have Jakob doing everything he can to help these street kids in India, so that they can have a better life by building these orphanages. And that's his goal, is trying to find ways to help these people. In a way, that's what Jorgen is also trying to do. They're all acting in ways where they're trying to help. They're trying to do something that's good. It's just, I think there's an element in the way that Jorgen pictures doing what's good and what's right in a way where it's more manipulative, and he doesn't realize it. It's helpful that by the end of the film, it feels like they are in a place where they can come together and heal and work together, and it feels very positive. It's just it's frustrating and it's sad, I think, that Jorgen wasn't able to recognize that earlier on and had to go about it this way. Yeah. It's interesting the way the film portrays wealth, though. I don't get the sense watching this movie, because I think it's easy to take swings at the ultra wealthy, and I don't think this movie does that at all. I think it's actually a really fair and balanced portrayal of like the effortless thoughtlessness of wealth, but not the maniacal sort of evil doing that can come with it, right?
Right.
He has a lot of money and a lot of resources and has to make a lot of decisions because of that. And as a result, it puts him in this position of like his immediate past experience dictates his future action. And in that, it comes off from our perspective as looking manipulative. I really don't believe that was his intention. And I think that's the lesson going into that third act, is that he also discovers, I get how my intention could look this way, and I just don't want to die. And that has driven all of his actions to that point. I think the sort of punchline to that, in terms of the arc of the story, is when Jakob goes back to India and invites Pramod, his very young protege at the orphanage, whom he loves very much, to come stay with him, to leave India and come back and be with him in Denmark. And Pramod says, "But wait, you think rich people are bad, right? Well, yeah, I'm going to stay here. Like, your ideology that you taught me was so important to me and made such an impact that I'm not leaving this orphanage in India. I'm not going." And I thought that was that was a hard thing to watch, particularly because it puts on Jacob's shoulders this lesson of the fact that wealth and privilege is not black and white, right? That wealth and privilege does not necessarily make someone a bad person.
Well, and also I think that it was an interesting thing that spoke to his place in the world. And, he had such a connection to Pramod, who, in the end, we realize, as much as Pramod really loved him and enjoyed spending time with him and stuff, his home was Mumbai, and that's where he was from. Living in the orphanage, that's where his friends are. It's not about just kind of this connection that he has with Jakob. He needs, he has a home, and it's about that space, less so just about being with Jakob. And as much as he loves Jakob, it's really about that space. And that's, I think, also the moment that you have Jakob realize, it's okay if I don't go back there, because he was really concerned that he wouldn't be able to be there. And he wanted to, I think that was a big part of, his reason that he said, I'm not going to take your money, because he felt he had to be there to make it work.
Yeah.
And when Pramod says that, it's almost like he finally has somebody saying, it's okay if you're not here. You can still put this in place and make it work for us to help us without actually being here. And I think all of those pieces, and that was the final piece that he needed to kind of realize, it's okay if I'm doing this in Copenhagen. I can be helping take care of Anna. She can be working with me. I can be there for Helen. Whatever is going to happen, we don't see really any final resolution with all of that. We get a sense that everything's going to be okay, though. And that's what I found so kind of gratifying is, again, yes, Jørgen was doing things for the right reason to try helping. It's just, he had a hard lesson to learn. And that was a powerful journey for him. It was really kind of a very difficult comeuppance in a fashion to kind of have that lesson learned. And it starts really when he comes home and his wife says, "I talked to your doctor." And man, is he mad.
Oh, yeah.
How dare he tell you, that was confidentiality. But it's really because there's a chink in this structure that he's built. And that's when everything really starts collapsing, and then he has to deal with it. And I don't know, I just found it to be so compelling to watch him as a character have to figure out how to, what's right and how it should have been to get there.
There's a thing going on in this movie that I really appreciated. there's a lot of sort of, I would say, emotional intrigue going on in the movie, right? And obviously, we have a lot to learn in the third act when we discover that he's been manipulating things all along. But at no point do they use the script to keep secrets from one another. Every single turn, every single reveal could have been hidden from one or more characters, right? He could have decided, I'm not going to tell Jorgen. We're not going to reveal to Jorgen that we actually had a relationship before, or that we were, that Jorgen's that Jacob is actually the father of Anna. We're not going to reveal any of that stuff. We're going to use the script to actually maintain artificial secrecy to build that sort of intensity across the course of our 2 hours together. And I was thrilled that every single sort of dramatic turn the movie took, it wasn't because they were hiding something, right? It was because they were outing something. They were actually shining a light on something which could have caused shame or regret or whatever. And they were letting the characters play it out. And let's just see what happens if everybody knows everything all the time. So that makes the movie much more one about human reaction than artificial, like, storytelling tropes to build secrecy and intrigue. And I loved that. And I bring all that up because as much as I was deeply relieved that this is not a Dogma 95 movie like Open Hearts, that was something that I think really came out of that. It just felt of a piece with the movement, with the allowing humans to have human feelings and reactions, and not letting the artificial secrecy actually define the story, but letting responses to tragedy and surprise rule the day. And I thought that was really special.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I feel like that's one of Bier's strengths as she does these family stories, where you feel like, and perhaps it's also kind of like there's a lot of handheld photography, like you feel very intimate with them. I did also just notice, man, she loves capturing like a single eye, like Mads' single eye, like right across his nose, and you're looking at his far eye, and it's just an extreme close-up of just the eye, and not just Mads. I mean, certainly we've seen that through both films, but she is really a master of extreme close-ups and of eyes, of their mouths, of different parts of their face as they're emoting. And I listened to some of an interview of her talking about it, and she talks about how when you're that close, you're really like right up there connecting to that person, but also it's creating this abstract image where it's more just a kind of about this shape on the screen, and in a way it almost helps you find that connection that much stronger because it is just kind of this abstract piece of an emotion. I found that to be a really interesting way to kind of look at the way that she was capturing the moments of the characters. And I think it's a strength of hers is that she finds those ways to kind of get into it's almost like capturing just like the raw pieces of the emotion itself. I find it really interesting with her as a filmmaker.
I do too. And you bring up Mads, of course, but we get it with Helen, and we get it with Jorgen. We get some like real specific pore focus on Jorgen. He's got some real pore action going on across the bridge of his nose. His T-zone is captured in some detail. It was only with Anna near the end. There's a reveal. Anna says something. They're having an emotional reaction, and I wrote down that like that was the first point when it went from her eye to like her kind of her nose to her mouth. And it was her mouth, like giant mouth fills the whole screen. And it was the first time I thought, oh, what if I were Stine Fischer Christensen, who plays Hannah, watching my mouth that big on screen? That's the first time it sort of took me out of the film. I was like, that is giant mouth. That is a giant, giant mouth. And I don't know what that added to the film.
I disagree. I loved it because I don't know. Maybe it's just because she had so much emotion and I don't know. I just felt like it was all there. So yeah, it's definitely like, a lot of big things. And certainly with Helen, that's Sidse Babett Knudsen, she was really carried that role through a lot of ups and downs. Very interesting performance.
She's riveting.
But yeah, also another person who just had to be very comfortable with a lot of incredible close-ups of her face. So yeah, very interesting. Great. Yeah, she's somebody who has also done more of these Dogma 95 films. Not that this is, but she had been in Mifune's Last Song, which was from 99. I think that was the third one. She also had been in Susanne Bier's film. I think it was her comedy that she did in 99, The One and Only, and with Paprika Steen, who was in last week's film. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if she has worked with her again. I think those are the only two films that she's done with her. But, she's another actress who all of these performances, they all carry the emotion in the film. It's a tricky film because there are such big emotions in this. You don't want it to fall into melodrama. You don't want it to fall into something where it's just schmaltzy and it feels like manipulative, because we're all being manipulated by Jorgen. He's doing all the manipulating. You don't want it to also end up feeling like the director used that as a tool to manipulate us as well. So Bier was walking a fine line in this, with her script with Anders Thomas Jensen, but did it in a way where it all comes across feeling very real and authentic. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it really is. How quickly this film could have turned into a soap. And I never got that feeling at all. Yeah. I was in it.
The only other thing, Johan Soderqvist did the score for this film. He's done a number of her other films, Brothers, Things We Lost in the Fire, and then he also did like Let the Right One In and stuff like that. So a great film composer. I enjoy Johan Soderqvist's music quite a bit.
Well, and speaking of the music, we should say how fantastic it was that Jorgen's favorite song was "It's Raining Men."
I know. I wrote that. I'm like, this is the second time in this film we're hearing "It's Raining Men." What is she saying about this character? Oh, it's so
I thought
funny.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, very, very interesting note for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, we will be right back, everybody. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by I Am Daylight, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. All right, so we haven't watched the sequel, but there is one.
No, it's not a sequel. It's a remake.
I mean, a remake. It's a remake, yeah.
Bart Frundlich did this in 2019. I remember talking about this on the Saturday matinee when the trailer came out, because I was like, they switched the genders. So instead of Mads Mikkelsen, we have Michelle Williams. And instead of Rolf Lassgård, we have Julianne Moore. Mm-hmm. And Billy Crudup is her husband, and their daughter is Abby Quinn. And I'm like, the premise of this film is that she got pregnant and never told him. And he comes to this wedding not having any idea that there is a child. How does that work if you flip it? That seems very tricky. I guess what they did, I'm curious to see it. It doesn't have good reviews.
It's a 6.3. It does make it over the 6 point.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes is a 45%, pretty low over there. Metacritic 52%.
Yeah.
I guess the way they did it is that they got pregnant and adopted, and right after they adopted, she leaves, and I guess what happens in the story is he changes his mind, and I don't know if this is really true, but I guess there's a 30-day grace period if you put a child up for adoption.
You can undo it.
He changes his mind. I apparently so. Within 30 days,
I was pretty sure in adoption, I thought there was a no takebacks clause. I really thought that was no do-overs.
Right? I know. Maybe it's like a prenup. It all depends on how you get it written, who your lawyer is. Wow. Anyway, there was a 30-day grace period. He reclaims the infant without telling her. And so that's kind of the whole situation, the way that it's set up there. So I'm like, I guess there's a way you could make that work. It seems like even more of a stretch.
It does seem like a stretch. But let me just tell you, I love that Billy Crudup. And
he's great.
He's really great. And he's one of those actors that as he ages becomes even more interesting every time I see him. So I'm kind of into it for that.
Let's see. In the original, Helen is 50, the actress. I'll just go off of ages right now. She's currently 53. Mads Mikkelsen is 56. So they're very close in age. And Rolf, who plays Jorgen, he's 67. So a little bit older than the two of them. In the remake, Michelle Williams is 41. Billy Crudup is 53. So there's already a little bit of a jump there, and Julianne Moore is 61. So there's an interesting age jump that they have with the characters here. I guess we're supposed to buy that Michelle and Billy were teenagers together, but
well, one, I don't buy that, and Julianne Moore is, how old did you say she was?
61. I don't buy that. How is
I don't
Julianne
buy that
Moore
in
61?
real life.
She looks younger than me. Seriously,
she does. She looks younger than you.
Thanks for that. I don't know. All crazy. I know is that Peter de Brugge in Variety said about the remake, this sensitive remake of Susanne Bier's overcooked Danish Oscar nominee has shrewdly been flipped from a male-driven meller to an emotional showcase for Michelle Williams and Julianne Moore. He praises the film for its subtlety as it, quote, strips away anything excessive, allowing subtext to surface in the quiet spaces between dialogue. But it also seems like he is one of the only people who actually liked the movie. Because generally it seems most people were not a fan and were more fans of this one. So, yeah, I'm curious to watch it, but I kind of think I'm not going to be a fan.
But you're going to watch it is what you're saying. You're committing to that right now.
I am always curious about these remakes. Why can't we just watch this instead of doing a remake? But, actors. Here's what I think it boils down to. I've been thinking about this because,
of course you have.
I'm a little irritated. I love Tom Hanks. I'm a little irritated that he's doing a remake of A Man Called Ova because I just loved that film. But I think it's like plays. I think actors like good, juicy roles. And they see a good, juicy role and go, ooh, I want my turn to play that character. They have that in theater, but in film, you don't get that. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we get so many of these remakes, because I think these actors are just like, oh, that would be great. I could really dig into that performance. I'd love to play that character. And that's the only way they get to. So I think I think that's what it boils down to.
Okay. That's your theory. You're sticking to it.
I am.
Okay. So how about awards? Did it win anything? Did people get noticed?
Well, at the Oscars, it did get nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. This was the year that Letters from Iwo Jima was nominated for Best Picture. It did not end up in the Best Foreign Language Film nominees. This is the year that The Lives of Others beat out this and Pan's Labyrinth and Water and Days of Glory, the Algerian film. The Lives of Others is just a favorite of mine, but of that list, After the Wedding, I think would easily be second. Strong films.
Yeah.
But that's not all. Over at the Bodil Awards, which are the Danish Critics' Choice, I believe we talked about last week. Stine, the actress who plays Anna, she won Best Supporting Actress. The film was nominated for Best Picture, but lost to A Soap. Also, Sidse was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Trine Dyrholm in A Soap. And Rolf was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Nicholas Bro in Offscreen. At the Roberts, which, as we talked about last week, are the Danish Film Awards, Stine also won Supporting Actress, actually tying with Stephanie Leon in Life Hits. The film was nominated for Best Picture, but lost to We Shall Overcome, directed by, somebody we've talked about before, Niels Arden Oplev, back in our Millennium trilogy. Mads Mikkelsen was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to David Dencik in A Soap. Rolf was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but lost to Bent Mejding in We Shall Overcome. Sidse was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Trine Dyrholm in A Soap again. The film was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, but lost to We Shall Overcome. Same thing for Best Costume, lost to We Shall Overcome. And then Cinematography and Sound were nominated, but both lost to the film Prague. And then we have the Best Editor actually nominated, but lost to a three-way tie between A Soap, Offscreen, and We Shall Overcome. So it's interesting. I think the Danish Film Awards, you're seeing a lot of particular films taking a lot of awards. And this one, it won one, but it seemed like Stine really got the notice in both cases. But
right. Well, and worth it. She was great.
Oh,
it's just interesting to me that Helen and Mads didn't get more notice.
Right, I know.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. How about at the box office? Did it make any money?
I honestly couldn't believe it, especially after last week. But I did find some budget information online for this film. In an article by Camilla DeMarco on cineeurope.org regarding the Rome Film Festival, Camilla wrote that this film's production cost 3 million euros. That is about 3.7 million in 2006 US dollars and 4.7 million in today's dollars. The film was released February 24th, 2006 in Denmark, then had its North American premiere at TIFF September 6th before its limited domestic release March 30th, 2007, opposite Blades of Glory, Meet the Robinsons, The Lookout, Are We Done Yet, and The Reaping. The film did okay for itself, earning nearly 1.6 million domestically and just over 10 million internationally, which is a total gross of about 14.8 million in today's dollars. That lands the film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $84,000.
Well, that's something. I mean, when you think about it, it really is just a wedding and a nice house. Like, that's what they paid for 3.7 million.
Hey, there were a lot
of big cameras.
We didn't talk about all the animal heads on his wall. I thought that was interesting that he was obsessed with death.
That's right. That was a crazy scene. We didn't even talk about that. Too many heads, man. Too many heads. All right. Well, I'm really glad we watched it. I think it was a great addition, especially after last week and my middling opinion of Open Hearts. And what it did for us, but this one was a hell of a rebound.
Now I think you need to watch her film In a Better World that she did in 2011. It actually won the Best Foreign Language Film. It's just, it's really fantastic.
I will do it. I will do it.
All right, everybody. We will be right back for our ratings, but first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, Fran Rubel Kuzui's 1992 vampire comedy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which kicks off our final series for the season, 90s Comedies.
I just met this girl named Buffy on Pike.
Pike isn't a name, it's a fish.
I liked her even though she seemed kind of flaky. But as it turns out...
You have been chosen, Buffy.
To do what?
To stop the vampires.
Does Elvis talk to you?
And things started getting weird around here. Are we having a nightmare?
You threw a knife at my head.
And you caught it.
She was the one person I could really count on. Kill him a lot.
Hi. What are you doing here?
What am I doing here? I'm saving your butt. That is a bad guy. Can we go, please?
The Slayer is unmasked. Let's finish it.
I think this relationship has potential.
Hi. How's it going?
You're obviously having a bad hair day.
If she can just get rid of those other guys in her life.
Stab him in the heart!
Chris
Christy Swanson.
I am so sure.
Donald Sutherland. Paul Rubens. With Rutger Hauer and Luke Perry.
Buffy, you're not like other girls.
Yes, I am.
Buffy, the Vampire Slayer.
I didn't even break a nail.
Directed by Fran Rubel Kazooie.
All right, Andy, it's Letterboxd time. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are you going to do?
Well, and anyone who already has looked at my reviews have seen that over on Letterboxd, when I first watched this a few years ago, I gave it 4 stars and a heart. And I think I'll leave it there. Although I feel like it's something that could go up with the more I spend with it, because I really just find it to be a powerful, touching experience.
Yeah, I that's why I was saying I feel like you sort of liked it. You liked it well enough at 4 stars, because for me it is absolutely 5 stars and a heart. I had a fantastic experience with this movie, and the fact that you didn't like it very much, I think is telling.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
This is a great win. I'm so glad to have watched this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what did you think about After the Wedding? We want to know. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in Discord, where we'll be talking this week about the movie.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth Andy.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who love this movie, a lot of people who have strong opinions about the music. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. I'm going to go first. Or should you go first? Do you want to go first?
Go, no, send on the high note.
Who talks first? This is a 2-star from Jake Internet, who says, my favorite weird thing about this exceedingly weird and bad movie is that it confirms, but in no way explains, why the film's patriarch, a stern and controlling Danish industrialist and family man, really loves the song It's Raining Men. I agree with all of that, except for the exceedingly weird and bad part and the 2-star part. That baffles me.
That does. I agree.
Yeah.
But just like yours, Ely also has comments about that. Great. Now I'll never be fulfilled until I dance to It's Raining Men with Mads Mikkelsen.
but in this case, gives it a 4-star.
4 stars. That's right.
It's Raining Men is a 4-star edition in your review, but only a 2-star edition for Jake? I don't get it. I'll never get it. All right. Thanks, Letterboxd. Andy, it's hard to believe we've been having weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals has links to purchase the source material behind our adapted film discussions. Your purchases there help support the show at no extra cost.
For the entirety of season 11, we featured films directed by women.
The only exceptions were some of our member bonus episodes.
We talked about The Lure for our horror debuts series, which is a very loose adaptation of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen.
Definitely miles from the Disney versions.
For our 10-year anniversary series, we covered We Need to Talk About Kevin, taken from the Lionel Shriver novel.
Man, that was brilliant.
And horrifying.
Yeah. The Journalist series included Merrily We Go to Hell and The Weight of Water, adapted from Anita Shreve's bestseller.
We filled some gaps in previous series with member bonus episodes on adaptations like Malcolm X, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, Cactus Flower, Wild at Heart, Life Force, and The Blues Brothers.
Our John Hurd series looked at a trio of adaptations: Chilly Scenes of Winter from the novel by Anne Beatty, Awakenings based on Oliver Sacks' nonfiction book, and Rambling Rose adapted from the Calder Willingham novel.
2 films in our coming-of-age debut series were adapted from books: The Virgin Suicides from Jeffrey Eugenides and The Diary of a Teenage Girl, Phoebe Glockner's graphic novel.
We had Queen of Kotway for our sports series based on Tim Crothers' nonfiction book.
And Clueless kicked off our 90s comedy series, loosely adapted from Jane Austen's Emma.
It totally took place in the 90s, though. Find all of these books and more adaptations on our originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today.